kill people and plants very effectively. But my neighborhood growing up, it didn't reflect that landfill. It was a thriving small community where I could walk to school, I could walk to a bakery, a grocery store. Like it was all in walking distance. But then the loss of manufacturing jobs in South Memphis and all over Memphis led to that small, thriving local economy where we even had our own drive-in theater. When that theater burned down, they didn't replace it. And a lot of other business did not um, survive during that time when that loss of manufacturing job. And if you took the South Memphis out of that story and you put a rural town in Tennessee, you could probably have a story of pollution. You can probably have a story of economic disenfranchisement in communities that have just been left out of the equation when it comes to the federal level. And I am here to say that's not how you lead. We are committed to working together to not only win this U.S. Senate seat as a community and as one community of the state of Tennessee, we are committed to make sure that not just like right now, where we have all 10 of these offices lunching all over the state, that is my commitment to to be able to listen and be available on this side of the election, and just as much when I get elected and become the first African American U.S. Senator for the state of Tennessee. I still have to take a breath sometimes because we're in the 21st century, still talking about it first. The first U.S. Senator, African American for the state of Tennessee. We have crisscrossed this state. We have heard stories of daughters talking about their moms being addicted because of the opioid crisis and not having the right type of health care. We have heard stories about how pollution, where cancer has run through the whole family, and you have only one surviving member, where they watch their parents die of cancer and their three sisters and their brother die of cancer. And we're saying that we no longer have to have an economy built on pollution and pain. We have industries that can not only heal our environment, but also help people's health if we take care of our environment. And so we're not going to die on the hill on any policy. We are going to go live so we can thrive and have clean air, clean water, and clean soil. I am here to serve. And that's the great state of Tennessee, and to make sure that all have access to healthy and safe communities where they live, learn, work, worship, and recreate. And we do that, of course, by making sure that everyone has health care, no matter who they are or whether or not they're working or how they got here to this country. Because in order to survive a pandemic, everybody needs patient-centered health care where they can go to the doctor and not be afraid that they're going to have to file bankruptcy like I did because they had too many medical bills. And so we don't need people worried about medical bills when we're trying to keep everybody healthy and safe so we can rebuild our economy better than it was before. And I am here to stand to say that there are three pillars to make sure that a society is healthy and safe. There's an economy that works around working people. No longer can we just serve the ultra rich in Congress. It's time to send a person that's going to look out for hardworking families by making sure that we have a living wage and a sustainable wage index where it keeps up with inflation and in the times and the way things cost. And not only do workers have a wage that's raised to a sustainable wage, but also that living wage, that sustainable wage index actually applies to veterans. It applies to people on disabilities and Social Security too. Because that, just because you are retired or you are on disability doesn't mean you need to live a life of poverty. With education, high quality education, not just what we have now, we need better. It needs to be fully funded, the same as our military, so we can have the high quality education, high class education that can compete with educational systems around the world. We should have the best educational system in the world. And the way to do that is to fully fund it, the same as we do our military. So our children will not be educated on the principle of scarcity. That means that we have childcare for working people, universal pre-K, and making sure our children are prepared for success. So when they go to uh, technical college or universities or historical Black colleges, that's actually public too. And people can actually be able to reskill and retool as we transition from those technologies and those manufacturing that pollute our communities, where people can go back into the workforce with jobs that pay even better, because we are not only cleaning up our environment, but we're also going towards the future with green renewable energy and rebuilding our infrastructure, making sure that our water delivery system touch every household, every business, every school, where if you can turn on that water, no matter where you are in the United States, and you can have a clean drink of water and feel safe. No one needs to live with lead, arsenic, or mercury, or any of those other type of chemicals that people have in their water. I'm saying that we can do things differently, and working together, I know we'll win. The polling numbers have been coming back in Tennessee. I don't know if you heard, but I already been telling people this is not a red state. This state ranks at the bottom when it comes to voting, which means that there's room to organize. And since we've been organizing from the beginning, now they say Tennessee is a lean state. And now, since the numbers have come back about how many people that have registered to vote, 1.1 million, and we still have registered voters to being counted um, at the Tennessee Election Commission right now. And so that number is probably going to go up some more. And now they are taking this candidacy serious, and they should have did it a long time ago. You know what happened with the tortoise and the hare? The tortoise won because the tortoise kept working at it and working at it, and the hare all of a sudden looked and saw how far ahead the tortoise was, and it was just a little bit late. So that's what's going to happen with them, because right, we've been switching voters over because they want economy built around working people, because they want high quality education, and because they want an environment with a just transition away from pollution. When those Bradshaw signs have been going out in the community, they've been pulling up Trump signs and putting down Bradshaw signs. And so that means that because of the work that we're doing, that we're going to be able not only to secure this U.S. Senate seat, but also deliver Tennessee to Biden and Harris. Working together, we will win Tennessee, and we will win for working people. Again, my name is Marquita Bradshaw. Go to marquitabradshaw.com to learn more. You can even volunteer for our campaign if you're not in our state. So I encourage you to do that. We have over 1,200 volunteers, and we still need more because we got 95 counties to cover. We can do it. Together, we will win. And that's the only way working people will win. And here I am, and I am ready to be the next United States Senator of the state of Tennessee.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for that, Marquita. I think we've got a lot of claps in the group. We do have some questions. And also, Mayor Pete, if you would like to, please chime in to kind of give us a national perspective. From Quentin Humbert, thank you, Quentin. Our first question is, once elected as our senator, could you address your ideas about working with the other senator, Marsha Blackburn, to help all Tennesseans, and what would that look like?
Well, of course, I'm a person that gives everybody an opportunity um, for redemption, right? And so she has not been on the right side. And so it's an opportunity to educate her about what Tennesseans actually want. And it's also an opportunity to work with people on the ground to make sure that she's replaced too, right? And there are 99 other senators that I have the opportunity to work with also, because these ideas are not just Democratic. These are American core principles that Republicans have wanted, that Democrats want, and independents want. And I know because I've been talking to Tennesseans all over the state. I've been talking to Republicans since this time last year, and they said, well, if you get past the primary, I'll be conflicted and I might have to vote for you. And so, guess what? We're going to have a lot of Republican voters that they don't expect. And we're also going to have a lot of voters that are new to this process. I had a young person that could not vote. And she was like, I just want something to do to help you, Marquita. I gave her a t-shirt and I gave her an assignment like I do everybody. And I turned her into an organizer. That's what organizers do. We create other organizers. And I told her to take her mom's cell phone and check everybody's voter registration in her family. And she found out her 73-year-old grandmother had never registered to vote. And she actually went to the website and told her grandmother all the reasons why she should vote for me, register her to vote, and her grandmother would be voting the first time in the general for Marquita Bradshaw. And she went through her whole family and made a vote plan for everybody, and they'll be voting together on the first day of the actual early voting. And so I'm telling you, there's a movement in Tennessee, and it's bigger than Marquita, and it's all about working people having a voice and having healthy and safe communities where they live, learn, work, worship, and recreate.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Mayor Pete, quick question for you. From what you're seeing, with kind of seeing this on the other side, being an advocate for all of these candidates, what are some of the key things that you want voters to keep in mind as they are making their plan to vote in their various states and also within Tennessee, and how they can actively still engage over the next 3 weeks?
Part of this goes to what Marquita was just saying about the need to bring lived experience into this conversation. As she was saying, Americans agree on so many of these issues, and they shouldn't be Democratic or Republican, although they're getting to be. Right? Most Americans believe we ought to expand access to healthcare. Most Americans believe climate's a real problem and know that it's going to affect the most vulnerable the most. Most Americans believe in making sure that that taxation is fair, that the wealthy pay their fair share, and that wages go up. These are things that the majority of American people, but for some reason, not the majority of American senators, believe already. And we've got to make sure that we continue to drive that message home. I'm finding as I go around the country, sometimes literally, we were out in Utah for debate prep, but mostly virtually, of course. What I'm finding is that there's a mounting awareness of this, and really two kinds of voters we're thinking about: those who are deciding how to vote, even now, and those who are deciding whether to vote at all. Now, for those who are deciding how to vote, a lot of it is folks who grew up with being Republican, meaning pretty much the same thing as being respectable. It's just habit. It's the community. It's your family. It's your church. It's your TV network. It's everything that came to you, told you to vote a certain way, and for a long time you did. But now you're thinking about it a little bit differently because you don't recognize the values that you were brought up with in what has now happened to the Senate GOP. Certainly, what has now happened in the White House, and making sure that those folks have that sense of outreach. That's why I love this idea of going to all of the was it 95 counties? We're at 92 in Indiana, and I thought that was a lot. So there's even more in Tennessee, but it's amazing how much it pays off to visit as many places as you can. Part of how Joe Donnelly became a senator here in Indiana was that even in the counties he knew he wouldn't make it, visiting, showing him the time of day so that it came back 60-40 instead of 80-20, made it possible for some of the other areas to put him over the top. Then we got the folks who were deciding whether to vote. And that's a lot. That's a lot of people who, not without reason, feel beaten down by this system, wonder whether it'll ever deliver for them, wonder whether it's a system that's meeting their demands and their needs in good faith. A lot of young people who are questioning whether it's worth it. And there we need to get out a message of empowerment, a message that says this is your moment of maximum power. All the things we've been arguing about or worrying about or tweeting about or protesting about, your moment of maximum power to actually do something about them is the moment you fill in that ballot. And that message is something we've got to drive home through these next 3 weeks, especially if we get polls that are way up or way down and have people questioning whether it's worth it to go in. Now, of course, there's so much that people can do. Phone banking, text banking, This pandemic has been a terrible thing, but it's also unlocked new ways of us being able to engage in different races that might be 1,000 miles away, or even reach out to our own neighbors in new ways through technology. And I'm so impressed with this campaign and every campaign that's using those technologies to engage people more often. We got to make sure we get the word out about races that are exciting, candidates that are compelling, like we're doing right here, because of course, we understand why the presidential election is getting so much attention, rightly so. We can't let it get so much attention that it's leaving no attention or oxygen for the other critically important races. And so even raising awareness, as well as raising volunteer hours, and of course raising money as we're doing here, that can go a long way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Marquita, we have another question for you from Sarah Kidd. How are you feeling about the rural areas? I'm in rural Northwest Tennessee, and I'm curious about the response you've seen from your campaign.
Okay, so I've been going to rural Tennessee, sometimes unannounced, but now it's kind of hard to do that. Uh, People are finding out where I'm going before I do sometimes. And so it's really exciting to see the crowds that we are getting in a pandemic. Of course, we're social distancing. These are outside. And so we're seeing crowds of 100 and 150 people, sometimes 200 people in rural Tennessee. And it's not just the individuals that's showing up, it's one person that's a representative for the whole family, because we're not just moving one voter to the poll, we're moving whole families and communities to the poll. And that's the whole organizing principle. So when it comes to rural Tennessee is not separate from West Tennessee rural. Usually they stick together because some of those policies that affect rural Tennessee affects West rural Tennessee, affects middle rural, and also East rural too. Some water, please. Yeah, and so I've been received very well in rural Tennessee. A lot of places have been sharing stories about just the lack of opportunities that's in rural Tennessee, and how they need economic development and support for small local economies and small businesses, and also the need for broadband, and how students are being separated from education right now, and people are being separated from jobs because of the lack of broadband. And so whether you're in rural Tennessee or urban Tennessee, where you can't get broadband because you can't afford it, it's still the same issue, and we have to fix it. And we have to treat broadband as a public utility. And so that's what I've been hearing from rural Tennessee, and I've been getting tremendous support from rural Tennessee.
Thank you. Thank you. A question that had come in earlier via email, and then Gray, we will get to your question, is in the midst of the pandemic, managing the coronavirus, after you are elected, and Mayor Pete, also for you with the work that you're doing there in Indiana, how are we going to move forward in our local communities? And what was it? How are we going to move forward in our local communities? And what else can we be doing just to better prepare ourselves so that we're proactive and not reactive 6 months from now?
Want to go first?
1 second, I'm unmuting you.
Sure. So I think it is really important to think ahead. Look, we take nothing for granted. We got tons of work to do in these next 3 weeks, but it's also worth looking to what we're going to need to be doing in 3 months, 6 months. We know that there's a lot of work going toward a vaccine for the coronavirus, for example. We also know that unless there's intention, sorry, the dog's a little excited here. You might be hearing a bit of that. We know that unless there is a lot of intention about equitably distributing medical resources like a vaccine, then we will continue to see communities of color, low-income areas, rural areas hardest hit. So we got to make sure there's intention around that. We've got to build up trust in this country after what we've been through, after what we're about to go through on Election Day. For people to have trust in each other, for people to have trust in something like a vaccine being distributed, for people to have trust in the outcomes of elections, we've got a lot of healing to do. And I believe that's very much going to be on the mind of a future President Biden. It's got to be on all of our minds to find ways to do that. We got to make sure that we're moving swiftly, because we are far from out of the woods when it comes to the economic shock that's gone on. For some people, the recovery's already happened, especially for those who were well off to begin with. But instead, there was a debate over whether it was going to be a U-shaped recovery or a V-shaped recovery. What we're seeing is it's sometimes being called a K-shaped recovery. In other words, some folks are bouncing right back to where they were. Others are worse off than ever. And as rent comes due, bills come due, unemployment benefits run out, we got to be ready to lift people up and help them get on their feet, and make sure that we're actually working not to restore what we just had, not to just set up the old economic ways with the same winners and losers and the same weaknesses, but something that's different and better and stronger and fairer and more equitable. This is going to take a ton of work, and so much depends on the U.S. Senate. The House has been doing a lot of this work already. They passed wage increases. They passed COVID relief. They passed democratic reform. They passed background checks, things that Americans want. All of it went to the Senate and died there. And that's part of what we have a chance to change by retaking the Senate and having a new kind of majority. And that will be a critically important partner in change for what we hope will be a new president, for the House and for all of us.
Thank you, Marquita.
So right now we're seeing some signs of long-term economic decline from the pandemic, including millions of job losses. And some of those have become permanent. And right now, what we need is for lawmakers at every level. So yes, we need to vote for the president. Yes, we need to vote for the US Senate. And yes, we need to vote for the state house positions and also the local positions, to make sure that people can have the support that they need in order for families to rebuild themselves with stimulus checks. And so we need to make sure that we have a stimulus package coming to working people now. And so that's for right now. And so you have to stabilize people for right now, and then you have to have a long-term plan where you actually build a support system for small businesses, because right now, so many of them are just being knocked out completely, being closed down. And some of my favorite places are talking about never coming back, and some have never opened up since the pandemic. And that's really devastating, because a lot of our jobs come from small businesses. And so we have to make sure that we have leaders in DC that understand the type of packages, the investments that it's going to take to stabilize people while they're going through the pandemic, making sure people can have health care for everybody, no matter where you are, and make sure rural Tennessee get the support that they need to have hospitals that actually be able to treat people and be able to move not only from this pandemic, but have an economic system that was way better than before.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have Mayor Pete's going to have to hop shortly. However, there was a very good question. I just want to make sure, because I think for both of you framing it, hold on one second. Gray wanted to ask, what is the Bradshaw strategy to reaching out to rural and conservative voters about climate change, environmental policy, Medicare for all, etc., without freaking them out? He says, they say, I know that there are a lot of grassroots support happening, but some of these folks don't believe that these topics even exist. So I guess for both nationally, Mayor Pete, what are we seeing? And then Marquita, what are you doing on the ground?
Oh, I'm breaking down barriers, because I'm not talking lofty policy. I'm not talking to politicos. I'm talking to everyday people. And I ask them one question when it comes to healthcare. Do you want your neighbors to have healthcare? I hadn't met anybody that said no yet. And I was like, okay, do you consider the other 94 counties, even though you're in Shelby County, you're a neighbor? Because we're just one big neighborhood in Tennessee. Do you want all of us to have health care? Do you want all of us to have access to hospitals and different things like that? And I was like, well, this is the way to do it. And people was like, okay, that makes sense. And when you use common sense, when you talk to people, about policies and make it in a way where they can understand how it's going to affect them and their neighbors, they sign on and then they fight for it because they believe in it. And so giving people the tools to become organizer is how we've been doing here on the ground when it comes to healthcare. When it comes to environment, that's pretty clear. That's pretty clear. I hadn't met a farmer, a conservative, or a Republican, or independent, or a democratic socialist that tell me that they don't want clean air, clean water, and clean soil. I haven't met anybody that don't think that we have a problem with pollution and that we can move towards different industries and show them the type of jobs and the amount of jobs that's going to come from fixing our communities. Yes, our water delivery system is old. And so that means that people are getting dirty water in their tap. And so we can fix that. Our sewage system is, nobody wants to talk about where that stuff goes, but eventually it has to get fixed and it doesn't have to stink in order, because we can have a closed loop sewage system where it just don't dump into our creeks, rivers, and oceans, that it can actually have a place to go and be contained and don't pollute. Like, these are technology, it's science out there that can not only save us, but also make us healthier. And people sign on to that. And once they become a believer, then they become a Bradshaw voter.
That's spot on in terms of the way I think about this too. Sometimes you just got to reach people at the level of everyday life. Maybe people were taught to believe a certain thing about the name Obamacare, the term ACA, or the finer points of the individual mandate. But when you break it down, like Marquita was just saying, do you want healthcare? Do you want your neighbor to be able to get healthcare? Would you rather move in a direction where more people get healthcare or less people get healthcare? Because the choice really is that stark. It strips away some of that political noise and lets you get to what really matters. And on issue after issue, what we found, and I used to specialize in some of those counties, like in Iowa, the ones that voted for Barack Obama by a big margin, and then by an equally big margin turned around and voted for Donald Trump, and now they're on the table again. These are voters who just want to understand if they're going to be okay and how this affects them personally. So making it personal about whatever it is in each of our lives, in each of our stories, makes us so passionate about this election, and making sure that for the people we're speaking to, that we talk about why it might be personal to them and ask a lot of questions. That's something that can resonate in a rural area, conservative area, just as much as an area where we know we're going to be in good shape. And it also brings me to one other reason why I consider it so important to be involved in races like this one. And it's that the Democrats who do get elected, the Democrats who beat the odds and win in more conservative or Republican states or districts or communities, are the ones who are going to have the instincts and the vocabulary we're going to need to govern. The red states produce Democrats who have that experience of trying to win people over in territory that the pollsters would say they shouldn't even try. And as we take that experience on board, we can use it to win more people over and to try to build those bridges that we're going to need in order to have any kind of governing agenda. It's so important to leave no voter behind and to leave no vote on the table. And this is exactly the approach that it's going to take to make that happen.
Thank you so much for that. Mayor Pete, I want to be respectful of your time. So if you have to hop, please just chime in. We do have one more question from Marquita. Quentin is a retired pediatrician, and kind of tying into the broader scope of healthcare, Medicaid for all, and kind of the pandemic, he would like to ask, what are your plans once you're elected to ensuring that children have quality healthcare and resources available to them?
Well, this is what I know. I'm old enough to know that the American Affordable Care Act in its original form was supposed to be universal health care, and then it was stripped down. And so let's get that, whether you call it Medicare for all or expanding the ACA to include more people, that's eventually where it's trying to work to. So that's that. And in a system where you have patient-centered healthcare that the dollars actually follow the health outcomes of the patient and not our current sick care system that's right now, um, children will have the type of doctors that are well qualified to treat them. Because in a system like that, we have an educational system that support putting pediatricians in the right place. And so that's how you build out policy. Not just, you can't just talk about healthcare without talking about the educational system to support it and bring in more pediatricians. Because when we expand it for everybody, that means that we need more doctors, more pediatricians, and making sure that that's equitable across all the counties in the state of Tennessee, and that people get the health care that they need. And so, just so you know, just having an educational system that support, making sure that pediatricians are having the support to, well, young people are having the support to come into the medical profession as pediatricians. And I actually have to jump off, everybody, because we're at the Memphis office opening, and it's like a ton of press outside and people too. So I'm so excited, and I'm so glad that you were able to share this journey with me. And I want you to go donate to marquitabradshaw.com, or Akila's going to drop a link that you can go straight to the Act Blue to donate. And also, if you haven't already signed up to volunteer, please do so. And I want to thank, oh, is it Gidgy? I can't hardly see that writing. We have to increase the font on these computers.
Gigi, I think it is. She says thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gidgy, for volunteering already at the age of 16. And yes, what you're doing is great. And there'll be more opportunities. We'll be running shifts from 9 to 9. And so we have plenty volunteer opportunities, from texting from your couch, calls from your couch, and also there will be lit drops. For those of you who are under 18, if we're doing lit drops, you have to be with your parents to do lit drops. Okay? So thank you, everybody. And I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm going to say until next time, when I am your next United States Senator of the great state of Tennessee.
Thank you. Mayor Pete, any closing comments?
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Marquita. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this. I love that you're getting straight to work. And this reminds me when I first connected with her on the phone, we talked, and she was already in between office openings. And this is exactly the kind of work ethic it's going to take. Gidgy, I love this. 15 years old, made 1,000 texts today. If she can do that before she's even eligible to vote, all of us can probably do a little more. So let's hear it for Gidgy for getting involved at your age, and everybody for being part of this. I can't wait. For those of you who were there when I came through Tennessee, you received me so warmly, and it made me more enthusiastic than ever to come back. Let's see to it that the next time we're reunited, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in person, that we have a lot to celebrate. That's up to us in the work we're about to do, and you're in the middle of it right now, or you wouldn't be here. So thank you. Keep at it. Stay motivated. Stay healthy. Tell your friends. Tell your neighbors. Let's get this done.
Thank you so much, sir. And to everyone who's joining us this evening, we're so very grateful for having each and every one of you here. We are going to be in touch with a little follow-up email shortly. And if you need anything from the team, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've got 21 more days to go. Let's make this happen. Everybody have an amazing evening. Bye, y'all.